Hi, this is Brass Check, and we happen to be recording this April 22nd, 2022, but it could be recorded anytime, really. This has been on my desk for months, and I wanted to do something with it, and I'm just going to do it right now. Get it off my desk. It's from a book called Dispelling Wetiko, W-E-T-I-C-O, Breaking the Curse of Evil, and it's by a guy named Paul Levy, L-E-V-Y. And he has something really important to say, and I'm going to read a selection. Many of us can't fathom the level of evil to which full-blown Wetikos have fallen prey and of which they are capable. I think a Wetiko is a human being that's just been taken over by evil. They've basically become an instrument of evil. And if you think of people like Anthony Fauci and Joseph Biden and I don't know, any one of thousands of public figures, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, people that just are in the business of inflicting misery on humanity, and that is their full-time job, and they're really good at it. And they're oblivious, possibly, to the fact that what they're doing is demented. I'm guessing that's what a Wetiko is. I don't know. But whether we know what this word means or not, he's got some interesting things to say. So many of us can't fathom the level of evil to which full-blown Wetikos have fallen prey and of which they are capable. They have a distinct advantage if we don't recognize their predator-like nature. We can't possibly meet their challenge unless we clearly discern what we are up against. As the old adage counsels us, it is important to, quote, know your enemy, unquote. The depth of depravity being acted out is so dark, however, it induces in many of us a tendency to pretend that it isn't really happening. And I have to say, one of my talents is I don't have that tendency to pretend it's not really happening. I don't have that problem. And I guess that's sort of the essence of Brass Check. To put this stuff out there, it's not pleasant, it's not happy, but it needs to be looked at. So that's why we say for those with the courage to look behind the curtain. And not everybody does, believe me. And it is tough to have to look at this stuff. But anyway, when evil, for example, is being enacted by our own government, by those who are supposed to have our best interests in mind and are entrusted with our protection, it is tolerable to realize that atrocities are being perpetuated in our name. Thus, the evidence has to be internally denied. You know, there's a great saying, my country, right or wrong, but actually that's not the full saying. It's a phrase used by a lot of jingoistic morons to justify depravity. The original phrase, which came from Carl Schurz, a senator and I believe a Civil War general, said this: my country, right or wrong. If right, to be kept right. If wrong, to be set right. If right, to be kept right, and if wrong, to be set right. That's what he really said. And it's so interesting that the warmongers and others cut that part of the quote out. So I want to repeat that sentence again. When evil is being enacted by our own government, by those who are supposed to have our best interests in mind and are entrusted with our protection, it is intolerable to realize that atrocities are being perpetuated in our name. Thus, the evidence has to be internally denied unless we're willing to face it. This works to the Wetiko's advantage as it allows them to continue to act out evil in a manner which is denied by and incomprehensible to us. Their evil is so off the radar of our accepted system of morality that it is practically beyond the ability of our legal system to redress. Boy, is that the truth. If you, if anybody wants to be a professional criminal, go into government or law enforcement. And it's probably the smoothest way to enter a life of crime. Our lack of imagination for the evil existing in potential in humanity is a direct reflection of a lack of intimacy with our own potential for evil, which further serves to enable the malevolence of the Wetiko to have nearly free reign in our world. And of course, we're all capable of doing wrong, and we need to face that too. We can't afford to have a concept of evil that is too small. This is why Carl Jung, that's the famous psychologist, counseled us to develop, quote, an imagination for evil, unquote, because being able to imagine the scope of evil that human beings can fall prey to, become instruments for, and act out empowers us to see the evil more clearly as it appears both in the world and within ourselves, thereby deal with it more effectively. An imagination for evil. That's what I guess we're working on here at Brass Check, to just relentlessly expose these things, not with long essays, but just blunt, explicit, cut to the point of what is going on and what's wrong about it. I continue from this book. Evil devastates any possibility of an intellectual response. The tools of the rational intellect are as helpless in coping with the after effects of evil as it was in preventing it. In our psychic blindness, we are complicit in the spreading of the evil of the Wetiko psychosis, a systematic evil whose depth and depravity is beyond the capacity of words to fully describe. Evil ruptures and paralyzes the ability to language our experience, creating a seemingly unbridgeable gap between language and the event that it is supposed to describe. Finding ourselves confronted with that place of no words, we are forced to simultaneously discover and create a new language, a language which is universal and transcends language itself, a language known as art. It's interesting. So he talks about art as a way to just acknowledge what the heck what is actually going on in our world. Not sure art is the only solution, but it's definitely one of them. An expression, and I'm continuing a little further, an expression of the success of our government's psyops against us is the fact that there's so little awareness that the powers that be assault on our minds that it's hardly even part of our national dialogue. So there's so little awareness of their psyops that it's hardly even a part of the national dialogue. The insidiousness of covert manipulation of our minds is even found in the very term global war on terror. The global war on terror is a crazy-making, self-contradictory statement, as we can never stop terror with a war. On the contrary, wars induce terror. This term carries with it a false and self-negating premise that, if accepted, we have already given away our power and lost the game. As if the person flipping the coin tells us, heads I win, tails you lose. If we leave this underlying assumption unquestioned, we unwittingly allow the powers that be to frame the agenda on their terms. And this is what I am constantly railing against, the carelessness, the sloppiness of language, adopting the language of the predators to describe what's going on. We have already fallen under their spell without knowing it, as our capacity to think and respond creatively is undermined. Our inability to creatively respond to the war on our consciousness is an expression of being immobilized in fear, as if frozen in trauma. The war on terror is really a war on our psyche. It is ultimately about control of our minds, which is a reflection of the covert and subversive operations of the Wetiko. And again, this is from a book called Dispelling, Wetiko, Breaking the Curse of Evil. And let's go on with what a Wetiko is, according to Paul Levy. If our world were a dream or a fairy tale, we would say there is a curse or a spell that has befallen our land. Wetikos charm people, disarming and entrancing them, so that people will trust them and give away their power to them. The big Wetiko's most effective weapon is sustaining a climate of fear and intimidation. And of course, that was put on display, has been put on display continuously for the last 2+ years with the COVID con. They hook people through their unconscious blind spots and by playing with their fears, which is how they are able to control and manipulate others. Like a black magician, the powers that control the Wetiko media prey on and feed off our hopes, needs, and fears so as to drain us of our powers and codependently entangle us in their web of deceit. And I'm thinking most brass check listeners and subscribers, or you know that everything from the mainstream news media, everything from all the channels, is some variety of fraud, sometimes extreme, sometimes minor, but always fraud and always with a agenda, and most 99 times out of 100 an agenda against you. I continue from this book. By inducing a primitive emotion such as fear, Wetikos depotentiate the linear and logical part of the brain and speak directly to the reptilian-dominated right part of the brain, which is pre-verbal and has to do with our primal animal survival instincts. Mass psychology then becomes the order of the day as our species, animated by fear, which the big Wetikos are only too happy to cultivate, reverts to the primitive psychology of the herd. Boy, doesn't that describe the last 2 years? Terrify people, disconnect them from their intellect, and hook them up to this primitive psychology of the herd. Collective amnesia ensues, continually fed by a self-generating web of endless denial and refusal to see, as the manufactured consent is recreated anew and repeatedly reinforced every moment. This is what your friends and neighbors are going through. They've given into this, they've fallen into this, and they are ensnared by it. Our programmed refusal to see reality, our own ignorance, is the chief door in our lives through which the evil of Wetiko enters. That word is so funny. We don't really need Wetiko. I mean, I like this book. I like what he's saying. He's describing the phenomenon really good. I'm not so sure we need to give a weird name to it. Once entranced, just like members of a cult, people give their power away and become passive and subservient, incapable of discerning what is real from what is made up. Propaganda is capable of making people believe both everything and nothing at the same time, as political theorist Hannah Arendt has observed. And again, you just can look around at the people that make absolutely no sense. They've been vaccinated, they've been double boosted, they're wearing their masks, and they're freaked out if you're not vaccinated. Well, I'm sorry, I thought your vaccination was a magic protection against all mortality and disease. Why are you worried whether I'm vaccinated or not? You've got a mask. Your mask is great. It's the best thing ever. Why are you worried then? It's irrational. They both believe everything and nothing at the same time. Once the Wetiko media captivates our attention, it captures a part of our self-reflective, discriminative awareness, thereby restricting the range of our conscious awareness, which is the signature of a master hypnotist. And we've done a lot of programs on hypnosis. We're going to do some new ones coming up soon. But we were talking about COVID as deliberately induced mass hypnosis as far back as the late spring of 2020. Yeah, it's good to know a little bit about hypnosis, the process of it. Once the attention of the masses becomes entranced, the corporate/government media can then play with our minds by feeding us a fabricated version of reality that directly serves the big Wetiko's interests. The Wetiko media, because it dominates the way the majority of us receive our information, exerts a field of force that attracts the congregation of true believers, and boy, these people are true believers, like iron filings aligning themselves around a magnet, conform to the desired viewpoint. The unholy trinity of corporate government media, AK, the corporatocracy, I would also call it the kleptocracy, can create an obsessive fixation on certain sensationalized events that seize the collective imagination, thereby rendering it inoperative for dealing with more important events or for engaging in its higher potentials. And I could go on and on. It's a very interesting book, but I just love the way he articulates, evil is way deeper and way more distributed, especially through the upper echelons of our society than most people grasp. And B, a lot of people just, they fall prey to the psyops and the mental manipulation and the propaganda and the fear mongering. And fear does turn off your rational mind. That's just a fact. It's a biological reaction. If you're in grave danger, it's time to stop thinking and start moving. Of course, nobody can move, so you're just sitting there losing your mind, listening to the nonsense of the TV and the radio and the internet and all these other sources. And these guys, as I've been saying, I mean, long before COVID, but saying a lot during the COVID period, they've been working on this. They get up every morning, they meet in their offices with their whiteboards, they figure out what the lie of the day is, what the best phrasing to use is, and how to distribute it, and then they distribute it, and they see how it works, and if it works, they add fuel to the fire. If it doesn't work, they come up with something else. It's all engineered, it's all planned. Thousands of people are employed by this. Really? Thousands? Absolutely. Count all the news media, national and local. Count all the public health offices, national and local. Count all the local governments, national and local. This adds up to thousands and thousands of people. Now, most of them are just zombie mental slaves, just following orders. But make no mistake, there is a group in Washington, D.C., and probably New York and probably L.A. are contributing to giving these zombies of evil, their marching orders. So when I say there are thousands, I don't mean thousands of people are aware of what they're doing. They just, get the orders of the day and they follow them. So on the positive note, things do seem to be breaking. It's so interesting that the Tesla guy is trying to buy Twitter. That's actually going to be a huge problem for them if he does get Twitter, and if he does do what he should do with it, which is restore it to its platform as a public debating area. That's going to be a big problem for them. They really count on controlling Twitter, and not only are they going to lose their megaphone, there's also going to be a whole lot of discussion. Who knows? Maybe I'll be allowed to post to Twitter again. That'd be interesting, personally. The other good news is to watch the total abject failure of CNN and its CNN Plus streaming service. This just goes to show you the absolute deranged, separated from reality, cluelessness of the news media. They are so used to buying their own bullshit. Do they not know that the streaming business is now one of the most competitive businesses on the planet? And they thought they were just going to wade into it with their little bullshit offer of CNN streaming, and people were going to pay $5 a month for it? I mean, talk about delusional. They spent $100 million, and they acquired, I believe, 10,000 paying customers. If you have a calculator handy, that means they acquired a $5 a month customer. Each $5 a month customer was acquired at the cost of $10,000. You don't have to be a business mogul to grasp that that's not going to work. And to the credit of whoever runs that thing, they're after less than a month in business, they're pulling the plug. So that's another good sign. Uh, I think it's also becoming just harder and harder to believe that Joe Biden is anything but a shell of a human being um, who has been completely taken over by the most depraved and unhinged forces of our society. I think everybody sees that at this point. Um, but apparently he's going to run again. I mean, wow. Wow, amazing. But anyway, this I now get to take this off my desk. I hope you found it interesting. Um, it helped me really value what it is Brass Check does. You know, sometimes you just sort of get into the rut and you're just doing what you do and you wonder, is anybody listening? Is it worth it? Why are you doing this? Um, there are certainly many other things you could do that would certainly reward you a whole lot better. But you realize, no, this is really important. We do need to look at evil uh, with a steady gaze and in detail. And we do need to talk about evil in detail. And we need to continuously break that trance that the government news media, corporate news media, are trying to ensnare us in. It's work. It's not easy. You stop thinking, you stop using your rational mind, and you will soon find yourself believing all the nonsense that they're telling you. So it's work. It's kind of like a workout. So I think Brass Check is really a mental gymnasium, and you don't have to watch every video. Sometimes you might need just a break, but it's probably very good for your intellect and your mental health to be reminded every day that the other side is working very hard, not only to do evil, but to cast a spell over your mind and the minds of your friends, neighbors, and family. And maybe this will give us a little more compassion when we look at our poor, deluded friends, neighbors, and family, and just understand that they are under this spell, and it's not necessarily an easy thing to resist it, but resist it we will, and we will continue to. And it does appear that many, many, many millions of Americans, and I refer to Americans because it's the bulk of my subscribers, but also we're important, not because we're special, but because we have the potential to be a free country, and our freedom, imperfect as it is, has been a model and a hope for the world. And so it's really important that Americans figure it out and get it together, not only for ourselves, but for the sake of people in countries where they don't have as many options and as many advantages as we have. Oh, and one thing I just learned, it's a simple thing, but I was talking to an Australian fellow, and he said, yeah, everybody, all these new technologies are brought to Australia and New Zealand first, all these smartphone technologies, and that everything in those countries, and they're small countries population-wise, so they're a good place to test technology. They're all living their lives off their cell phone, and 99.9% of the time, it makes things really convenient. You need a driver's license. You just go to your smartphone, hit a button, and it gets renewed. And anything related to licensing or dealing with the government or whatever is just simplified and streamlined and made convenient. The downside, of course, is when deranged people take control of your government, which certainly happened in New Zealand and in Australia, is it makes it really easy to lock people down. You could not go into a restaurant without showing your QR code, and your QR code better show that you're double vaxxed and boosted, or you're not getting in. That's a little harder to pull off in the United States, thank God. Uh, I believe we put out something a couple of days ago about the fact that I do not, never have carried a smartphone. Um, I've got one. I use it for as a camera because it's a great handy camera, but I don't rely on it, and I certainly don't have a QR code or any of this other stuff, nor do I ever intend to get any of those things, because it was clear to me that these things, for all their wonders, are basically designed to be um, ankle bracelets. They are designed to imprison us. Um, and I don't know if anybody's ever going to talk about that. I don't know if a movement's ever going to arise. But if there were anybody in government with any intelligence, they would be drafting laws to prohibit the abuse and misuse of smartphones. And of course, the only group that's really abusing and misusing them is the government. So, restrictions on our government from how smartphones are used. That's absolutely critical for making sure that what just happened never happens again, well, and what is still happening never ever happens again. That's just one of the things that needs to be done. Anyway, uh, I got something out of this book. I think I've read the key points to you. Dispelling Wetiko, Breaking the Curse of Evil by Paul Levy. Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.